Well, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining. My name is Jaishua and I'm the program manager here at the Workers Lab. A little about me, I've been here at the Workers Lab for about 3 years now, just over that. And so I've been working on the Innovation Fund throughout my time here. So yeah, don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. You'll be able to do that through Innovation Fund at theworkerslab.com, but also through this webinar. And so our agenda for today is going to be hopefully a pretty quick overview, and then we'll get to some live Q&A where people can ask questions. But we're going to quickly run through who we are as the Workers Lab, give you an overview of this year's Innovation Fund, as well as share resources you can use in the process of submitting your application, talk about some past winners, and then we'll do a quick preview of the application. Yeah, as I mentioned, end our time with Q&A. So as you're navigating your time today, some housekeeping rules for you. Please use the Q&A function for any questions that you have. They'll be placed in a queue. Antonella is so graciously lending her time to help us navigate the questions, and she'll help sort those for me. In addition to that, we'll send a follow-up email after this webinar that will include a recording of this webinar, as well as other resources such as access to our office hour sessions. And so office hours, which are essentially 15-minute slots where you get one-on-one time with staff from the Workers Lab to talk about the Innovation Fund. You might have very specific questions around the type of idea that you have and if it's a fit, etc. Office hours will take place between January 27th and March 17th. And so these are completely optional. They do not have an outcome or they do not impact the outcome of your application. And so we encourage you to participate if you need them explicitly to get a better idea of how to submit your application or if you're a good fit. But otherwise, you should also have the resources on hand on our website to submit an application. And so these slots for the office hours will be made available next week, along with, as I mentioned, an email with a recording of this webinar. And then last but not least, as I said, if you have any questions, email innovationfund@theworkerslab.com. If you have technical support issues, issues with navigating the AwardForce platform and submitting your application, just reach out to if-support@theworkerslab.com, if-support@theworkerslab.com. Great, and with that, let's get started. So our vision at the Workers Lab is a society where all workers are safe, healthy, secure, and have power. But right now, not all workers can say that they are. That's partly because many of our systems and structures that make and keep workers safe, healthy, and secure weren't created with all workers in mind. And so all of our past winners of the Innovation Fund believe in this vision and have shared in this vision. Even if we use different tools and strategies to make this vision real, it's ultimately something that we're inviting everyone to share in this vision as you apply through the Innovation Fund, and really leverage it through the ideas and projects that you have in play and that you're working on. And so to achieve this vision, we believe that we need to invest in new ideas for workers. And really, so that's our purpose, is to give new ideas for workers a chance to succeed. And we know that, because our vision is big, there is no magic roadmap. But that's why we're structured as an innovation lab, because we want to recognize humbly that there are a lot of different ways about going about processes and creating new systems and structures to better serve workers. And we're going to need to be able to tinker with old ways of doing things, improve on those, add new ideas, translate that into policy, etc. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And we want to be the place for workers to be able to come get that support in building those ideas. And so it's last but not least, it's important to note that we started at the Workers Lab in 2014 as one of the very few spaces for early stage investment in the kinds of ideas we're talking about here. And so we're proud to continue to stay at the forefront of uplifting new ideas for workers, because we know there are very limited resources that exist for leaders like you who are here today to build on your new ideas and really to try new and ambitious things. And so hopefully you're here because you identify as one of those leaders and you want to have more of a chance to give your idea, prove it out, to pilot it, et cetera. But that's what we're really trying to do here with the Innovation Fund. And so our core strategies at the Workers Lab really are to invest, to then learn, and then inform, to inform change in the country. And we do that through three primary means: our Innovation Fund, our Design Sprints, and our Learning Hub. So we're talking about our Innovation Fund today. That's essentially where we identify and uplift new ideas for workers. Our Design Sprints are where we work on, in partnership with other organizations, governments, private companies, et cetera, to design solutions that no one else is working on. So where we cannot already invest, we will create programs with partners of ours and design solutions. And then last but not least, from all the work that's going on in those two program areas, we put that into our Learning Hub through reports, through webinars, et cetera, to really try and grow both learning, understanding of the work, what new issues workers are dealing with, how they're showing up, et cetera, and that way informing both leaders locally and federally to create change in the country. So now we're talking about this Innovation Fund. So the 2022-2023 Innovation Fund Fellowship is specifically one for early stage ideas. So separate from our previous innovation funds, which were structured more traditionally, where we would look at ideas and then invest and then follow on with 12 months of support, we've decided to flip this cycle on its head a little bit. So we'll first be starting, as we always do, with an intake of applications, but then we're going to move towards selecting 6 fellows for a 4-month fellowship. And that 4-month fellowship and the whole premise of this Innovation Fund is really targeted at creating more equity for communities of color who, historically and now continued. I think the most recent stat came from TechCrunch, where 1% of all venture capital funding was going to Black founders as of 2022. So not just historical issues, but a continued representation or lack thereof of those issues. And so we believe that the Workers Lab is at a strong place to continue to support early stage ideas and to create better equity in access to capital for communities of color. And so this cycle, compared to others, is going to be even more early stage. And it's really around how our country can better serve workers in more modern and inclusive ways. And so you might be asking, what's new? Who should apply? And really, we have a broad definition for new. It's any innovative solution or new approach. It could be a program, a service, a tool, a framework, a policy, et cetera. But really what we're trying to look for in this case is ideas also that are thinking about sustainability of the idea long-term. So you don't have to have anything immediately in terms of your roadmap for the next 3 years for the idea, but we hope that you're in the application process, you're taking some time to pause and think about what does this idea look like in 3 years, in 5 years, et cetera. And the application itself is intentionally tailored to do that. And so, as I mentioned earlier, entrepreneurs of color and also women are highly encouraged to apply for this cycle. Again, that's what this cycle is rooted in. It's equity around access to capital investment. And so to what end? So this cycle is really about making all workers safe, healthy, secure. And so any idea that is targeted at that and that you're working on, again, it's going to be broad, but if it's serving workers in this country, especially low and middle wage workers, and it's making systems and processes more modern and exclusive, then you're a fit. And so the fellowship itself will take place over 4 months. And what we're doing with our fellows that we select is they'll be given a $5,000 a month stipend to participate in the process. And it's roughly going to be 8 to 10 hours. And at the end of that, we'll have a showcase, which we have done. So we'll have a fellowship showcase where all of our 6 participants get to share their ideas with the broader world. And then from there, we'll invest up to 3 grants at up to $200,000. And so that will also then come on with 12 months of support after that, as we've traditionally done. through the end of December 2024. If you're asking what does the process for reporting, et cetera, look like, again, at the Workers Lab, we try to be as light touch as possible while giving you maximum access anytime you need help. But typically what we've done is we'll have a couple check-in calls during the year. We'll convene the group of fellows together. There's typically one interim, which is a 6-month report, and then one final report at the 12-month timeline. And then we also like to do work around learning. So we love to hear about what you're learning in the space. This is often an opportunity for us through our Learning Hub, as I mentioned, to piece together different leaders across sectors to talk about issues. And so that's some of the work we try to do as well. And we hope that that supports your process and materials you're able to send to other investors or funders as well. And then through the process, we want to be able to add value wherever we can. And so part of that is curriculum that we have on hand, whether it's your business model, strategic aspects, PR, marketing, legal, etc. But then we also leave room for you to tell us what you need. And again, explicitly so, we've done that in our application for this cycle. And so we're leaving room for you to tell us, what do you need, what's important to you? That way the fellowship can be tailored around the specific support and tools that you need to succeed. And then last but not least, we love our alumni of the Workers Lab. They've gone on with our innovation fund to do incredible things. And so we try to uplift voices as much as possible, even 3 years, 5 years after you've left the specific 12-month process of the innovation fund. And so that's a good plug also to follow us on social media so you can hear about all the great work that all our innovators are doing. Next, we have some past winners. So in 2022, the investment cycle started in 2021, but in 2021, we had 398 applicants that we then invested in 6 projects in close to $1 million in funding. Again, we had large representation as we always do. So 41 US states, DC, and we always get a number of international applications as well. And again, if you don't already know, you're welcome across the board, whether you're an innovator, entrepreneur, you are currently a nonprofit, public or private sector. We encourage everyone to apply. And if you want to see more about our past winners, you can do so on our website. There's a tab called the Learning Hub where you can look at our innovators, or if you want to read their stories under the tab called Updates, you can look for the blog that we posted about our 2021 Innovation Fund winners. They're up here on the screen. So Los Deliveristas Unidos, that they're based out in New York City. Let's Get Set is helping low and middle income women, especially women of color, get access to good savings and financial tools as they navigate their working through financial aspects for both their own career growth and for their families. Reclamo, also based out in New York City, is working on expanding access to submitting wage theft claims. And so they're providing legal and tailored technical support through a streamlined application that makes everything easier. Black and Pink is working on providing resources and support for sex workers in some of the most underserved regions of this country. Solidarity Tech is building organizing tools that can be scaled for organizations that run campaigns. And last but not least, United for Respect is building their function around both artificial intelligence, but also the collection of data for worker movements to help, again, worker organizations scale their work as they look to more national or global projects. And so again, if you want to read more, that's available on our website, and I encourage you to go read more just to see the diversity of the types of things that we invest in at the Workers Lab. So next, we're going to talk about eligibility criteria. Again, so because this cycle is targeted at fellows, we've tried to be inclusive around our language, but this is going to be one individual that's going to take part in the 4-month fellowship. And so if you're just an individual, you don't have an entity yet set up around your idea, that's completely okay. Typically what we'll do for intake, at least at this stage of the process, is that we'll identify that and know. And again, you're allowed to use your social security number. And so that should not be an impediment. If there are any issues around that, or you feel like there's anything that you are sensitive towards, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to have that conversation. Again, we want to make this process as easy and inclusive as possible. Or if you already have an entity set up, right? Maybe you haven't sort of fleshed out your idea all the way, but you've started making stuff and selling some products. That's great as well. Again, we're looking for things on the earlier stage of the process, but there is no restriction around industry or sector, and there's no restriction around staff size or budget. And again, this cycle is targeted more towards entrepreneurs, but we especially encourage ideas even from cooperatives. We've had ideas from the past from unions, nonprofits, public sector, and again, really just thinking towards what is your 3 to 5 year goal for your work, and articulate that. And that will provide us with a great idea of where you want to go and if it's a fit this cycle. No restrictions on geography, as I mentioned. You just need to have a social security number or be an organization with a US tax ID number. Again, this is all curated around the laws that we abide by in our reporting and taxing. And so if you feel like there's an issue for you or you're not going to be able to comply with it, just reach out to us and send us an email, or we can talk about it in office hours. We're happy to work through it with you. Last but not least, you can submit multiple ideas, but ultimately only one project idea per organization or individual will be selected. And so next, we're going to talk through our timeline. So as you probably noticed, the application has already been open since December 2022, and it will continue to stay open through Monday, March 27th. And as I mentioned, office hours will start next Friday, and they will go through that second last week of March before the applications close. So if you need additional resources, don't be afraid to reach out. The 4-month fellowship will start in July, so we'll let people know by May to give them some time and heads up to prep. For that, setting aside 8 to 10 hours per month for the process, and it will take place July through October. And then we will have our fellow showcase in November. And then last but not least, the winners will be announced in December. And as I mentioned, that 12-month additional support goes from January of 2024 through the end of December 2024. Now, here are some criteria around how we review and select for applications. And so we are going to have 3 parts to our selection process for this cycle. The first part is comprised of a committee of the Workers Lab staff, as well as trusted advisors that we have at the Workers Lab. So here we really go into asking, is this an idea that is a critical problem facing workers today? As the Workers Lab, as you can imagine, that's central to how we select for new ideas and innovations that we invest in. The second is it making all workers safe, healthy, secure, and have power? And then is there a clear understanding or thinking about how workers are going to be included in the design and development of the project? And then last but not least, we really want to see what creative thinking you have about long-term possibilities. So given that this is a cycle addressing the inequities in access to capital, part of the work that we're going to do with you is foster that thinking, support that thinking, and push it forward. So it's okay if you're still in the process of thinking. You don't have to have that all figured out. And we intentionally word that in our application as well, basically saying, if you don't know yet, it's okay to say you don't know. I think the clearest picture is one where you just tell us where you are. And that gives us an opportunity to understand how we're going to be able to best support you. And then for part 2 of our review and evaluation criteria, it's going to be a deeper dive on capacity and learnings. And so we want to specifically understand not just the types of things that you would like support on, but how we're going to actionalize that. So there's an ask for 3 specific SMART goals that you have. And that really is tailored to understanding where do you want to be at the end of this fellowship or at the end of this year? How can we help you get there? And so it's completely for you to outline these goals. We don't really have an agenda about how these goals are curated. We just like you to make them as specific as possible. And so that's why we're using a SMART goal structure, and that's laid out in the application as well. In addition to that, we're all about learnings here at the Workers Lab, right? We take a higher risk investment approach because we believe that if new ideas aren't given a chance, they can never take off. And we do so through being able to learn with you. So you thinking about how you're going to learn in the process, how you can share those real-time insights, that's incredibly important as well. And then last but not least, we'll take a look at the video pitch. Again, we tell this to everyone, but the video pitch is not at all about the video quality itself. It's really content focused. It's a chance for us to get to see and hear from you. And if you have more questions about that or have any issues, again, we're willing to talk about other needs or processes. If you feel like a video pitch isn't right for you, we're happy to have that conversation. And next, last but not least, part 3 is going to be centered around that live showcase, as I mentioned. And so the fellows will pitch their ideas in November this year with a broader group of investors, supporters of the work, the Workers Lab board, etc. Really around drawing more attention to the idea. In addition to the investments at the Workers Lab, it's always our goal to try and draw in other investors, other funders that are going to support the work as well. And so if you're worried about that at all, don't be. It's a part of the fellowship and prep that we're going to do with you. So we'll have coaching calls ahead of our showcase. We'll get you prepared. We'll support you with your slide deck, all of that. And then we'll have some Q&A as well, really where the Workers Lab board wants to be able to get a better sense for the work that you're doing and get closer to the work. And so that's just an opportunity for them to ask more in-depth questions as well. And next, we are going to do a quick preview of the application. And so if you have not seen it yet, this is our application. I hope you've had a chance to go in, but if you have not, no worries, I'm going to walk it through right now. You'll be able to see 2 primary tabs, the application guide tab right here, and then this tab for applications. So in the application guide, you should be able to access, if you click here, a Word doc of the application itself. We've always heard from people that it's great to have a reader-friendly version that they can download and share with their team. So that's what's provided here. In addition, there's also a PDF version when you first open up and start the application. And then here we have just really the most high-level application overview that gives you a sense of the timeline, tips and recommendations, as well as additional details on how to get support that I first talked about at the top of the webinar. And so what you'll do as an applicant is you'll click on applications. Again, there's more details here, key dates, selection considerations, but you'll scroll down and then you'll click start application. And so to start the application, you'll need to be able to fill out just which applicant cycle you're in, it's the 22-23 Innovation Fund Fellowship. And then you need a project name. We ask that you keep that project name to 5 words, and that's just logistically so that it's simpler on our end to identify each individual applicant and innovation. Once you've done that, we begin to ask some basic contact information. Again, there's a PDF here, as I mentioned, and then there's application guide access here as well. And this first page is just about your participation, basic information. And then as you go, you can press save and next. Again, we recommend you take your time with this application, so you don't need to rush through it. You can work on it separately and then copy paste your responses in, but also it saves as you go. So that's hopefully to your benefit and ease of filling out the application. The second tab we're on is about general information. So again, you might just be at the idea stage. We're not expecting that many, if not most, of the ideas coming in for this cycle might not have an entity set up around it. So it's totally okay if you're not an organization yet. It's also okay if you're fiscally sponsored as an individual working on an idea by a different organization. We've tried to, again, make it as broad and inclusive as possible so that anyone with an early stage idea can apply. And so once you get through these pieces, we just ask for additional information. If you have a social media presence, if your idea doesn't, that's totally okay as well. We're not expecting that. You can put in your individual social media, or if you don't feel like doing either, you can just put that you don't have any and move on. And then this tab, the ecosystem information, is when we begin to get into some of the meat of the application. We want to understand how you identify. We want to understand what areas you're working in, what sort of worker populations you're targeting. Again, as the Workers Lab, this is probably some of the most important things to us. We want to understand who you're serving, who your idea is going to help, and what types of communities and ecosystems you plan to support. And we want to get a better sense of where you are, what stage of your idea, where you're at with your stage of your idea. And so, as I mentioned, we're looking for earlier ideas, but we've been able to break out what an early idea is into 3 different areas. So first, you're just at the idea stage of, you've identified a problem, there's a problem, and now you're researching the types of solutions that you're working on. You're thinking about how to create a solution. Or you could be at the solution stage. You've already, you have an idea for a solution. You're honing in on that. You want to develop it, build it out into what it's going to become. Maybe you're a little bit further than that, and you are already specific about what you're developing, whether that's a program, service, tool, policy, anything else. And now you're scoping specific product types or product interfaces that you're launching. Or you could be a little bit further along where, you've begun to start to design that prototype. You're looking for partners to begin piloting it. You have all of the earlier stage stuff together, but now you're just struggling to get it off the ground, or you are getting close to the stage of getting it off the ground. So those are all what we consider early stage. And it's an opportunity for us to come in and support you where a lot of times other people won't be, or it'll be too high risk. And so again, that's where we see our role as the Workers Lab. And if you have any questions about stages of development, again, you can access time with the Workers Lab staff in office hours, or you can send us an email as well. In addition to that, we always, again, are keen on learning. And so we want to understand the context of financial capital and how that's influencing our entrepreneurs and innovators who are coming in as applicants. So we want to hear more about how you came up with your idea, what gave you sort of the passion and purpose to do what you're doing, the industries and aspects and sectors that it's tied to, whether or not you've received financial support before, what that process has been like for you, what you see the outcomes, etc. And again, this portion is purely for our learning. And again, it doesn't have an impact on the outcome of your application. And so this is really the meat. This is the meatiest part of the application, this ideas and impact section that's under the project information tab. Again, we'll ask you to confirm the name of your idea. That's the 5-word max idea that you came up with at the beginning. Again, logistically, to keep things simple on our end. We'll ask you to specifically identify the workers and workforces you're serving, to talk a little bit about your idea, why you're the right person to pursue this idea, work through the ecosystem analysis and value. So what sort of ecosystems are you related to? To what extent is your idea innovative? How are you working on something that's new and different? How are you sure that it's new and different? And if you're not, you should be able to state that as well. And then what do you see? And this is what I was mentioned earlier. What is the short and long-term economic and social impact of your idea? And then we work through a few questions for implementation. Again, since these are early stage applications, we're not expecting you to have implementation fully figured out, but we're hoping that this application can help you think more deeply about specific pieces of that implementation process, especially ones that are in line with the values of the Workers Lab. So how are the voices and experiences of worker informing the design, development, and implementation of your idea? If you're not there yet, or you're only beginning to think about that, again, that's okay. And similarly, about what you envision your idea being and growing into over time. Are you thinking about revenue or bringing in cash for this idea at all? If not, that's okay. We just want to see where you're at. And then this is what I mentioned around the SMART goals. So specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. We want to get a sense for what are three main goals that you want to accomplish over the next 4 months, or really by the end of the year. We say 4 months because ideally we want to tackle these during the fellowship. But if you have 1 or 2 goals that are specific to the 4 months, and then one that's a little bit further out, that's fine as well. Feel free to share. But there is a limit on just 3 goals. And then the last question in this section around what do you need to build this idea? And again, that's really a question targeted at understanding how we can support you during the 4 months. As you might imagine, because the context of this cycle, professional, personal, and lived experience are incredibly important to us at the Workers Lab. And so we want to understand, do you identify as an entrepreneur? What experiences have you had with accessing financial social capital? What's your leadership style, or how do you define yourself as a leader? And then understanding a little more around the specificities of your background, as well as specific tools and skills, separate from building an idea, but tools and skills that would be beneficial to you personally in this process. So you would fill that out, press save and continue. And then this is the video I mentioned. This is the last section. It's called short video pitch as our last tab. And basically what we want here is a video pitch, no longer than 3 minutes, really just talking through your idea. And we've listed guidelines here for both how to approach the content in this video, and also how to name it, how to upload it. If you need things like subtitles or translation, again, we try to structure all our processes to be open and inclusive. And so if you need help, or you feel like this process is not the most supportive for how you're going to need to submit your application, we're happy to have a conversation about that as well. And then here in the last pieces, there's just 2 last things. One is consent for sharing. So there's a lot of questions we get around privacy and how we're protecting our applicants. And so we don't share our applications with external folks unless we get consent to do so. And really, as the Workers Lab, we believe in being the place for new ideas, but we also recognize that we're not going to be able to fund everything and invest in everything. And there are many great ideas that oftentimes we won't be able to select. And so we try to share ideas that we believe are relevant and that we know other people are working on, supporting, funding, investing in. And so we ask for your consent to share applications so that even if you're not selected as a winner or as a fellow in this case for this innovation fund, that we can still get your idea out there in front of other eyes and get it as much attention as we can bring to it, and really uplift ideas, even the ones that we don't bring through the innovation fund process. Last but not least, we have a short feedback survey here. And so we ask that you fill this out. This helps us better tailor our processes and our resources to each innovation fund. And again, as an innovation lab, we're always looking to improve even with all of the work and the process that we put out there. So you would finish that and then you would click on submit application. And just remember to do that before March 27th. That's a Monday. And so now we'll jump into a couple more things on the Innovation Fund. We're going to talk through some tips and tricks. And so again, as I said at the top, don't rush at all. Take your time with the application. Again, being clear and concise is important. And so in this case, I think the biggest piece of it for most applicants is going to be taking the time to think about the types of responses that you're giving and being clear about where you're at. Again, we don't expect you to have everything fully baked. It is an early stage idea process, but we want to encourage you to start to do some of that thinking in this process. And then being able to deeply understand the problem that you're addressing is really important. We want to understand your theory of change about how you see that problem being addressed with the solution that you're working on. And so clarity in that is vital, as well as understanding how workers are a part of that, how they're involved, how the communities and the ecosystems related to that problem are going to be impacted. Again, a clear idea on if you're working on an idea that you know other people are working on, how is your idea different, new, more innovative, experimental than some of the other similar ideas out there? And then last but not least, as I've mentioned, alignment with our vision, purpose, and values. which are widely available on our website. But if you have any specific questions, you can reach out to us and ask as well. And so we would love to have you spread the word to others you think are interested. Maybe you've heard something on this webinar and you feel like you think of someone who would be a great applicant. Maybe you're applying, but other people who could benefit as well. We would love for you to share it with others. Again, we want to create equity in this process and really be able to target communities that haven't previously been either historically represented in access to funding or currently are still struggling with that. And so sharing this with others is an incredibly important part of this. And you can also stay in contact with us through our social media. That will be the best place to find out about the deadline to get reminders, as well as to read about our past winners and past finalists. And so I would like to thank you all so much for your time today, for attending our webinar session. I hope this was helpful. And again, we have the log of Q&A, so I'll try to reach out to you if you did ask a question that we didn't get to. But a great way to get all your questions answered if you're still uncertain is to attend a 15-minute office hour slot to watch a recording again of this webinar or to look on our website. And so those resources will all be provided for you. So thank you again so much. And we hope you have a great rest of your week.